The cigarette smoke curled upward in the dim office, illuminated only by the glow of a computer screen and the fading evening light. My boss, Richard, hadn't spoken a word since I'd asked to leave early. The silence between us stretched like a rubber band ready to snap. I stood there, car keys clutched in my sweaty palm, watching as he took another long drag. All I'd said was that I needed to pick up my daughter and get ready for my first date in 3 years. I never expected it would lead to this moment that would change everything. Hey everyone, if you've ever felt trapped between your responsibilities as a parent and the demands of a difficult boss, this story might hit close to home. If it resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about navigating the complicated balance between work and family. Your support means everything to this channel. My name is Marcus Chen, and 6 months ago, I was just another overworked employee at Westfield Marketing, trying to raise my 8-year-old daughter Lily on my own after my wife passed away from cancer 3 years earlier. The company had been my lifeline during the darkest period of my life, offering flexible hours when Lily was struggling with the loss of her mother, providing health insurance that covered her therapy sessions, and giving me purpose when everything else felt meaningless. Richard Donovan had been my direct supervisor for 5 years. In the beginning, he was understanding, even compassionate. He'd lost his wife too, though to divorce rather than death, and seemed to recognize the unique challenges of single parenthood. We'd developed what I thought was a friendship of sorts, occasional drinks after work, conversations about our kids, mutual respect. But something had shifted in the past year. As Lily began to heal and I started to emerge from my grief, Richard's attitude toward me changed. The flexibility I'd once been granted disappeared. My requests for time off to attend Lily's school events were met with sighs and thinly veiled irritation. The camaraderie we'd shared evaporated, replaced by micromanagement and criticism. "You're not focused, Marcus," he'd say, hovering over my desk. "The team needs you present. Your personal life can't always come first." I'd nod and apologize, swallowing my frustration. The job market was tight, and single parents couldn't afford to be unemployed. So I adapted, arranging more playdates for Lily with friends whose parents could pick her up from school, working late into the night after she went to bed, sacrificing my own needs to meet Richard's increasingly unreasonable expectations. Then I met Elena at Lily's school fundraiser. She was a new art teacher with kind eyes and a laugh that made something long dormant inside me stir to life. When she suggested coffee sometime, I surprised myself by saying yes. And when that coffee turned into dinner plans, I felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration I hadn't experienced in years. The day of our date, I'd finished my work early, exceeding the targets Richard had set for the week. The office was emptying out, it was Friday, after all, and I approached his office with what I thought was a reasonable request. "Richard, I've completed the Henderson proposal and sent over the quarterly projections. Would it be alright if I headed out an hour early today? I have a date tonight, and I need to pick up Lily from her friend's house first." His fingers froze over his keyboard. Slowly, he swiveled his chair to face me, his expression unreadable. "A date?" he repeated, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Yes," I said, shifting uncomfortably under his gaze. "First one since Sarah died, actually." Richard reached for the pack of cigarettes he kept in his desk drawer, a habit he'd supposedly quit years ago. He tapped one out and lit it, despite the company's strict no-smoking policy. "You know," he said finally, exhaling a cloud of smoke, "we're behind on the Mercer account." "I sent you the updated materials yesterday," I replied, confusion creeping into my voice. "You said they looked good." "Things change," he said flatly. "I need you to stay and revise the entire presentation." The client called with concerns. My heart sank. "Richard, I can't. I've arranged for Lily to stay at her friend's until 6, and the reservation is at 7:30. I can come in early Monday too. This is a priority client, Marcus." His voice hardened. "If you leave now, I'll have to reconsider your commitment to this company." The threat hung in the air between us, as tangible as the cigarette smoke. In that moment, I saw Richard clearly for perhaps the first time, a lonely, bitter man who resented my attempt to rebuild my life. "Are you threatening my job because I want to go on a date?" I asked quietly. Richard took another drag, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm reminding you of your priorities. This company supported you through your grief. We made accommodations. And now that you're ready to move on, suddenly your personal life takes precedence." The unfairness of his words hit me like a physical blow. Yes, the company had been accommodating, but I'd worked countless unpaid overtime hours, taken calls on weekends, and consistently delivered results despite my personal struggles. I'd earned every accommodation through dedication and performance. "My priority is my daughter," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And part of being a good father is showing her that life goes on after loss. That happiness is still possible." Richard stubbed out his cigarette on his metal desk lamp, leaving a black smear. Very poetic. But not very professional. Something inside me, something that had been bending and accommodating for 3 long years, finally snapped. "You know what's not professional, Richard? Smoking in the office. Changing project requirements at the last minute on a Friday evening. Using emotional manipulation to control your employees." I took a deep breath. "And being jealous of someone trying to find happiness after tragedy." His face flushed dark red. "Jealous? That's absurd. You're being insubordinate." "Am I?" I stepped closer to his desk. "Because for the past year, you've systematically tried to isolate me. Every time I mention a social event or a new friend, you find some reason I need to work late. You've scheduled meetings during Lily's school performances. You've forgotten to approve my vacation requests until it was too late to make plans." Richard stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward and hitting the wall. "You're crossing a line, Marcus. No, you crossed it when you decided to punish me for healing." My hands were shaking, but my resolve was firm. "I'm leaving now to pick up my daughter and go on my date. If that means I don't have a job on Monday, so be it. Lily deserves a father who shows her how to stand up for herself, not one who models being bullied into submission." I turned to leave, half expecting him to shout after me, to escalate the confrontation. Instead, there was only silence. At the doorway, I paused and looked back. Richard had sunk back into his chair, another cigarette already between his lips, staring at nothing. "For what it's worth," I said softly, "I know how hard it is to be alone. But trying to keep others from finding connection won't make your own loneliness easier to bear." The drive to pick up Lily was a blur of adrenaline and anxiety. What had I done? Had I just sacrificed our financial security for a date? Was I being selfish? The questions swirled as I pulled up to her friend's house, forcing a smile as she bounded out to the car with her backpack. "Daddy! I made you something," she exclaimed, climbing into the back seat and buckling herself in. "What's that, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. She handed me a folded piece of construction paper. I opened it to find a crayon drawing of 3 figures, a tall one labeled Daddy, a small one labeled Me, and a medium-sized one labeled Daddy's friend Elena. "Mrs. Parker said we should draw our families," Lily explained. "I told her you were going on a date with Miss Elena tonight, and she said maybe someday Miss Elena could be part of our family too. Do you think she will?" The simple hope in her question brought tears to my eyes. "I don't know, Lilybug. This is just our first real date. But I'm glad you're okay with me spending time with her." Lily nodded solemnly. "Mommy told me before she went to heaven that she wanted us both to be happy, even when she couldn't be with us anymore. I think she'd like Miss Elena. She's nice and she doesn't make me feel bad when I mess up my art projects." Out of the mouths of babes. My daughter's wisdom put my own fears into perspective. Sarah would have wanted us to move forward, to to find joy again. And she certainly wouldn't have wanted me to remain under the thumb of someone who used my grief as a tool of control. By the time we arrived home, I'd made a decision. Whatever happened with my job, I wouldn't cancel this date. Lily helped me pick out a shirt, the blue one, Daddy, it matches your eyes, and I called my regular babysitter, Mrs. Gonzalez from next door, who arrived with homemade cookies and a knowing smile. "It's about time," she said, patting my cheek. Sarah would be proud. The date with Elena was everything a first date should be, slightly awkward, filled with nervous laughter, and ultimately, wonderfully connecting. We talked about our work, our backgrounds, and eventually, about Sarah and Lily. Elena listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and sharing her own experiences of loss and renewal. "It takes courage to open your heart again," she said as we walked back to my car after dinner. "Especially when you have a child to consider." "Lily's actually the one who encouraged me," I admitted. "She gave me her blessing in the form of a family portrait that included you." Elena laughed, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "No pressure or anything." "None at all," I agreed, feeling lighter than I had in years. When I returned home, after a gentle goodnight kiss that held the promise of more, I found 3 missed calls and a text message from Richard. "We need to talk. Come to my office first thing Monday." I slept surprisingly well that night, despite the uncertainty hanging over my career. Whatever Richard had to say, I'd face it with the same courage I'd found to start dating again. Monday morning arrived with a knot in my stomach but determination in my heart. I dropped Lily at school with an extra tight hug, then drove to the office, preparing myself for termination, a formal reprimand, or worse. To my surprise, Richard wasn't alone in his office. Cynthia Westfield, the company's founder and CEO, sat in one of the visitor chairs, her elegant gray suit and composed demeanor a stark contrast to Richard's rumpled appearance. "Marcus, please come in," she said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "Richard has something he'd like to discuss with you." Richard looked like he hadn't slept all weekend. His eyes were bloodshot, his normally immaculate hair disheveled. He cleared his throat several times before speaking. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, the words clearly difficult for him. "My behavior on Friday was unprofessional and inappropriate. I've been..." He glanced at Cynthia, who nodded encouragingly. "I've been using my position to manage my own emotional issues, and that's unacceptable." I sat in stunned silence, unsure how to respond. Cynthia filled the gap. "Richard came to me this weekend with a full account of his behavior toward you over the past year. He's requested a leave of absence to address some personal matters, which I've granted." "I'm sorry," Richard said again, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "After my divorce, I threw myself into work. Seeing you start to move beyond your grief while I was still stuck. I was jealous. And I abused my authority because of it." The admission was so unexpected that I found myself nodding, processing his words. "I appreciate your honesty," I said finally. "And I'm sorry too, for what you've been going through." Cynthia leaned forward. "During Richard's absence, we'd like you to step into his role as interim department head. Your colleagues speak highly of your leadership skills, and your client satisfaction ratings are exemplary. The position comes with a significant salary increase and, most importantly, genuine flexibility for your family obligations." The offer was the last thing I'd expected when I walked into the office that morning. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Richard said quietly. "You deserve it. You've earned it, despite my attempts to hold you back." I accepted the position, and the following months brought changes I couldn't have imagined. Richard returned from his leave a different man, humbler, more self-aware, and eventually, a valuable mentor as I navigated my new responsibilities. We never became close friends, but we developed a mutual respect that made our working relationship productive. Elena and I continued dating, taking things slowly for Lily's sake. 6 months later, when Elena joined us for Lily's 9th birthday celebration, my daughter blew out her candles and immediately announced, "I wished for Miss Elena to be my second mom." Elena's eyes met mine over the smoking candles, and I saw in them the same hope I felt blooming in my own heart. Life doesn't always give us what we expect. Sometimes it takes away the people we love most. Sometimes it places obstacles in our path that seem insurmountable. And sometimes, when we find the courage to stand up for ourselves and what matters, it rewards us in ways we never anticipated. A year after that confrontation in Richard's smoke-filled office, I stood in a small garden, Lily beside me in a flower-patterned dress, watching Elena walk toward us in a simple white gown. Richard sat in the second row of guests, genuinely smiling as he witnessed the happiness he had once tried to prevent. That evening, as Elena danced with Lily while our friends and family looked on, I realized that the most important lesson I could teach my daughter wasn't about career success or financial security. It was about having the courage to protect your right to happiness, even when doing so feels terrifying. If you're watching this and struggling with a similar situation, whether it's a controlling boss, the weight of grief, or the fear of moving forward, remember that standing up for your right to heal and grow isn't selfish. It's necessary. Not just for you, but for everyone who loves you and depends on you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you in any way, please consider subscribing to hear more journeys of resilience and renewal. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for each other is share our stories of overcoming the obstacles that once seemed impossible. Because in the end, what matters isn't how many hours we spend at our desks, but how fully we allow ourselves to live the one precious life we've been given.